welcome to the Strong Her Collective. My name is Joy Shepard, nurse practitioner, IFBB Pro, and I have a very, very special guest today, Dr. Christle, and our topic today is going to be about Ozempic. So Dr. Christle, can you tell us about who you are and what you do?
Oh man. Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me on your very first kind of podcast recording. So I am a primary care physician. I trained in family medicine, and I spent a year additionally afterwards in sports medicine. So my main focus is taking care of both professional as well as recreational athletes. However, I do still see adults and kind of take care of their primary care needs, but most of my stuff is with athletes, people who are still active. And I practice mostly telemedicine based out of Michigan, but I'm also licensed in Texas, Nevada, and Pennsylvania.
That is quite the resume. And just for the viewers out there, I know you know this, Dr. Christle, but I'm a huge fan of Dr. Christle, huge fan of her husband, Dr. Mike, from Renaissance Periodization. And when I was prepping for my bodybuilding show last year, I binged on all his podcasts. He's extremely witty. They're quite the dynamic duo. And having Dr. Christle just to chat, and she's an expert in medicine and is well-versed in Ozempic. This opportunity just means a lot to me. My intention of doing this really is to inform and educate people, specifically women, about this medication. I want to really discuss what is health. How do we clear any confusion that we're seeing on social media? And how do we really empower women specifically to make choices for their health that's really going to benefit them long term? And that is why we are here today. So I'm just going to dive right in. Ozempic. Tell me, what is Ozempic and why the buzz now with this medication?
Great questions. So Ozempic is the brand name for the medication semaglutide. I know in the past, some people say semaglutide. I feel like it's tomato. But basically it is a medication that is in the class known as the glucagon-like peptide-1 receptor agonists. And so that's kind of a mouthful. So we call them GLP-1 agonists for short. And so these drugs really mimic the effects of the GLP-1 hormone, which gets released, and we have the receptor for that hormone throughout our body. So in our brains, in the hypothalamus, in our pancreas, our pancreatic islet cells, which produce insulin, as well as other places like the lung. And so the main function of the GLP-1 hormone when it gets released and it binds to these receptors is it does a couple of really great things. So the main thing that it does is it tells the pancreatic islet cells, hey, we need to produce more insulin. So it'll produce more insulin. What the other things that's really great about it is that it will do things like slow gastric emptying. So when you eat a meal, it doesn't just kind of go through, one end of the tube and out the other. It'll really slow down that digestion. And then there are a couple of different pathways, and I am not a huge neuroscience person, but there's a couple different signaling pathways within the hypothalamus, which sort of results in signaling effects that tell you that I'm not hungry, and you should decrease your food intake because you're not hungry anymore. So those are the main things that semaglutide really does. And I think the buzz about semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy is the brand name for its use for obesity. I think it's twofold. I think one, this is a newer GLP-1 agonist. We've had older generations of the GLP-1 agonists, also known as Saxenda or liraglutide. That's been around on the market for the treatment of obesity for about a decade now. The problem is that drug is actually, for whatever reason, I'm not really familiar with the economics behind it. It's still more expensive. It's about $1,500 for that medication. You also need, for Saxenda, you need to inject it every day. It's an everyday injection, whereas semaglutide is a longer acting medication, so you can inject it once a week. And then there were a couple of studies. One that I'm kind of off the top of my head, where they compared liraglutide with semaglutide in terms of weight loss, and semaglutide just sort of did a whole ton better. After a year of taking the drug, I think the percentage weight loss from baseline was somewhere on the order of like 15% versus with semaglutide versus 6 to 7% with liraglutide. And then from a social media standpoint, we now live in the age of Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Nowadays, that's where people are getting their information. And so you have this weight loss, this newer weight loss drug. It's a lot better. The side effect profile, people have less side effects with semaglutide. We have TikTok influencers. A lot of people are getting their information from social media. And so that's what generates, the hype, I think. So I think twofold. One, it is a better medication. And two, we have social media has just sort of exploded in the last couple of years. So, that's where I think where a lot of the hype comes from.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because we know Ozempic works for the people who are obese and have diabetes. This is impactful for them. What kind of demographic are you seeing in your professional space?
Well, so like you said, so in my practice, I typically, to be honest, my telemedicine practice is mostly recreational athletes. So I, tend to not see people with uncontrolled diabetes anymore, uncontrolled high blood pressure, which is the population that I saw while I was a resident in training. I finished my residency in 2020. And so it is sort of a different ball game. I'm really just, I'm definitely seeing it in the bodybuilding community, because I'm still sort of linked in through social media and whatnot. So I agree in the sense that I am also seeing it in that subgroup as well. I think what was new to me and was really fascinating that you pointed out was the sort of 40 to 50-year-old, who you tend to see in your own practice, who may not fit that category of being in the obese category, but they think that if I can just lose, the last 3 to 5, 10 pounds, already at a normal BMI with no comorbidities, who are wanting to figure out how can I get my hands on this drug. That was news to me. I mean, I knew it sort of existed, but I had sort of forgotten about it, because my space is sort of recreational athletes, bodybuilders, and actually I have seen a lot of buzz within my own sort of physician colleague groups on social media. So a lot of doctors do struggle with obesity and hunger management issues. And so a lot of them are interested in figuring out more information on how they can also get a prescription to sort of manage their BMI.
And it's interesting with Ozempic, because as I hear it from patients taking it, there is a part of me, just being a woman, like, look, I will admit I emotionally eat when I'm stressed out. I've had a long day. My son is complaining about something. I'm overwhelmed. I can easily open my cabinet and have a couple cookies, and I get that instant dopamine hit, and it feels great. And so I don't know if I have food whispers per se, but emotionally, food does comfort me. Culturally, it's being Asian, food has been a source of community. If you're like Kung Fu Panda, if you're sick or tired, happy, nervous, food is your go-to.
Right.
So I share that because I really do empathize with the struggle, and it's really real. And I don't want to shame anybody for either taking the medication, considering it, or they struggle with how they look and their weight. So that, I think, is really an important message, because of social media. As you know, people are going back and forth, and they're really putting people into boxes. And that, for me, hurts me, because I think that I see these different viewpoints more of an opportunity to have these type of high level, authentic and candid type conversations. The struggle that I see with my patients, again, women between 40 and 50, healthy BMI, wanting to use Ozempic, or they're already on it for the last 15 to 20 pounds. My concern is, what happens when they're off the medication? For this specific subgroup, they don't have enough muscle mass to begin with. So they don't have a baseline of strength or any consistent routine with strength training. Their protein is probably too low, and they're in a calorie deficit now if they're on Ozempic. And so I'm hearing all the good things that they're saying, how much it's changed their life. They look better, they feel better, their relationships are thriving, they're doing all these physical activities now. And they think that, oh my gosh, this medication truly is saving my life, my quality of life. I even had a patient who was tearing up, saying she doesn't get tempted to drink wine anymore. She's just the taste, she doesn't have the taste buds for it anymore with Ozempic. And she was concerned. She was borderline alcoholic. So I'm hearing all these real stories, these vulnerable messages from them. And then the duality is, I'm just thinking as they're talking, once they stop, are they going to gain the weight back? They don't have enough muscle mass, the risk for osteoporosis, and the mental component that they're going to have to deal with the rebound weight, such as shame, feeling helpless and now out of control. And at that point, where do they go from there? Exactly. What are your thoughts?
Exactly. I'd be very curious to hear how those conversations go for somebody with a normal BMI who's just looking to lose, 5 pounds or whatnot, how that patient education piece goes, because and also the medication is not indicated. Like, if you are not at a BMI that is, in the obese category, you technically don't qualify for it. So it's a long-term, it's meant for long-term use. It's not like I have a wedding that I need to go to, I just need to lose 5 pounds. Let me just shoot Ozempic up for, a couple weeks and then get in this dress and then, get off of the medication. It's really meant for long-term use. So, most of the time, people do gain the weight back. Whatever, once they stop taking the medication, those signals, do come back. The hunger returns, and people end up floating back to sort of, the weight that they were. For some people, there are, and I feel like this is a much smaller category of people. Some people have learned to sort of maintain the weight off. They've been able to maintain that weight loss despite being off of the medication. So I think the jury's still out in terms of, what exactly we can expect. But really, for somebody with who's been obese their entire life, who has had out of control hunger that has led them to that sort of weight, up until this point, it's meant for a long-term use. So I'm not sure, how the general, I guess, how your patient population is getting it. Is it through, is it online? Because there are places where you can get it without a prescription. I will, say that people have, mentioned that there are a lot of different, I think Weight Watchers has now joined up with Sequence to kind of, coexist. So that's also a thing. So there's many different avenues, and I don't know what kind of care they're receiving. But, having, for somebody who is already at a normal BMI, I think in addition, I wouldn't even recommend, prescribing this, but there really also just needs to be a good long conversation about well, we also need to get you, doing these other things as well. I know you're perfectly capable, you have what it takes to, start lifting weights, start exercising regularly and not just doing cardio, fixing your diet. So it's a little bit, has a little bit more protein in it, would be very helpful. And I just don't know, I'm not well versed in how everybody else is prescribing the Ozempic to really kind of make any generalizations at this point.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. And when I'm talking to my patients and asking them, how they're getting this, pretty much every doctor now, or a good amount, they're just prescribing it off label. And I think the red flag for me is there isn't any support with lifestyle modification.
Yeah.
There isn't any support of, okay, fine, you want to go on this, for example, I'll prescribe it for you, but let's have a plan to wean you off. And then your lifestyle is then going to take over, and that will be your foundation moving forward. So I don't hear any patients having that type of dialogue with their healthcare practitioner, and they're just prescribed it. And I don't think this is unique to Ozempic. I think doctors are also prescribing, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. And it's like, here you go.
Yeah.
And for me, the gray area is where is the proper education? And are we now leaving patients worse off with this medication because they don't have the education? And so that's pretty much what my patients are saying. And then kind of a more broader perspective, Ozempic aside, their women really are intimidated and afraid to lift weights. So I actually did a survey on my patient population, and context to, because these patients I've seen for 16 plus years. So there's definitely a level of trust, and we can be vulnerable with each other. And I would say a good 90% of these women say, I go to the gym and, I'm on the second floor. I see these big sweaty guys grunting, lifting some heavy weights, and it's just scary. And I can, you're in the strength bodybuilding world, so am I. So for me, it's my norm. And so when I hear from patients, it is humbling for me, because I do forget many times, put myself in their shoes. It is not always easy. And a group class or even a Peloton, it feels really safe. And there's really no room for embarrassment. I think women are afraid to get hurt with lifting weights too. And still in 2023, there's a deep fear of being bulky. And I wanted to create Strong Her Collective as a community to really break those barriers, because for me, it's disheartening to see women who are still afraid, and there's not enough support to go out there and lift weights, vanity aside, to have muscle for a better quality of life, to decrease the chance of osteoporosis, to model to your children, hey, this is health, and these are some good habits. And there's really no hacks if you're really going to invest in the long haul game. And yet my concern is, are we in a culture where thin is in? And how do we shift that conversation to, it's not a fat loss problem, it's a lack of muscle problem for vitality?
There's a lot to unpack there.
That's a lot. That was a load.
That was a lot of great points, but wow, that was a lot of great points you brought up there. I still remember the first time that I had picked up a weight. I was in my late 20s, and I was still very much overweight. I was 190 pounds and a grad student in Wisconsin at the time, when I decided I'm not a runner. I did a half marathon. That was fun, but I still didn't feel like I was, getting the kind of physique changes that I wanted. I did all cardio, all running, no lifting whatsoever. And something didn't seem right. So, at that point, I was like, well, maybe I should start picking up a weight and see where that takes me. I feel like the running thing was cool and all, but I still feel very soft. Like, yes, I am smaller, so to speak. The scale sort of says I've lost weight, but just, to be quite frank, I still felt like my arms were very flabby, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
And that's what sort of led me kind of down that path of like, I should probably do something different. I don't know what it is yet, but I hear weight training is sort of important, it's important to mix things up. And so that's, kind of what got me started in the first place. And it is hard. So I'm not sure if, it would be helpful if people had a personal trainer to sort of go in there and just be like, hey, man, it's okay. Because to be honest, a lot more women on average are less likely to get injured than men because and I'm going to get some flack for this. A lot of times guys have an ego and they want to lift as much weight as they possibly can for a single rep with no training leading up to that single rep. And then they end up seeing me because they're like, hey, I, tore my bicep, or I, tore my pec. And it's like, well, what did you do? I decided I was going to bench my 1 rep max today. It's like, oh, so a lot of times women are a lot more cautious just in general. And I think that's really great in the sense that I don't really see as many injuries in females on average, especially with recreational lifters in comparison to men who also recreationally lift. So, we should, as far as how to encourage women to do that, man, it's hard. I think trying to figure out what is actually going to motivate them. And for a lot of times it is vanity. And no judgment aside, I get it.
Yes.
We all want really nice looking arms. We want to wear a tank top or, a tube top without feeling, while feeling good in our skin. But in order to do that, I think having that muscle there is super important. And I remember very early on in the 90s when I used to get all those women's health magazines, Shape, Oxygen. And anytime they mentioned lifting weights, it was always a very thin person putting on weight, picking up a weight, gaining weight, and then having this physique that looks absolutely, amazing because now they have that muscle tone. And I just remember thinking like, wow, I'm actually fat. So I should probably do cardio first, get really skinny, and then lift the weights. That was like my big thing in the 90s. So
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's still kind of that mentality that's still persisting, even though now we have social media to kind of tell us otherwise.
I mean, you make a really good point. I think that from my observation, I feel like women 20 years old, 30s, they are more influenced by social media. They're seeing women now lift weights. There's a lot of Instagram influencers who are also personal trainers or health coaches. So I think they might be a little bit more open to that concept of strength training. I think that I'm 41 this year. So women 40s, 50s, we definitely lived in an era where we were just visually exposed to very leaner physiques. And that is kind of the standard of beauty. And you're right. They would say like front of magazines, get toned. And this is how you do it. And so I think there is a fear of fat. There is a fear of bulky because of the magazines and that type of influence before. And I like that you bring up the ego for men. And even though I'm a woman, I do have a little ego and maybe have a high testosterone level because I've jacked up my back and all these things like, like trying to go too hard and too heavy. And I injure myself a lot less when I work out from home, when I'm not trying to prove myself. But with some emotional maturity and experience, I've also learned, hey, you're not trying to win gold, you're not a power lifter, and it's okay. Lower your ego, Joy, train smart, train safe. I even love that post that you put on Instagram, Dr. Christle, where you were like, you didn't hit that weight, but you brought down the weight. And I was like, I love that, because
Yeah.
let's put our ego aside and let's just train with impeccable form. Let's stay consistent.
Yeah.
And that's really going to give you the results that you want. And you're
Right.
absolutely right. I think with women, yeah, we want to look good.
Yeah.
And hey, I do too. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think
Yeah.
that for women, the ideal physique, it will vary by person, but that toned look,
Yeah.
tone is muscle, which
Yeah.
is created with resistance training, and then
Mhm.
having a little bit lower body fat so you can see the
Mhm.
silhouette. And I know you don't like this term of the Ozempic face or the Ozempic butt,
Oh.
you know, because if you don't have muscle underneath,
Yeah.
then if you do lose a massive amount of weight, Ozempic or not,
Yeah.
you're going to just not have that, again, that shape,
Mhm.
because there is no muscle. I don't know
Exactly.
if you want to chime in about the whole Ozempic face, Ozempic
Oh my
butt
God. Well,
confusion.
I mean, it's going to come with weight loss, whether it's Ozempic or not. You know, we do have muscles on our face, but we don't, you know, it's not like we can work them like, you know, our biceps, our legs, or our butt. So, you know, that would just come regardless of however you decide to lose weight. So the other alternative is, you know, we can just, you can always go for filler, have them artificially placed back in, or remain at the body weight that you're at and have that extra padding on your face, depending on how your genetics go. Because some people, you know, when they gain weight, it shows up a lot in their face, and some people don't. Like, some people just look completely, you know, the same no matter what weight they're at. As far as the Ozempic butt goes, yes, if you don't, I know there was a lot of hype about, um, you know, oh, if you take Ozempic, you're going to lose your muscle. You're going to have this flat butt. And so, you know, I've been trying to really educate people on, you know, taking that time to really develop their butt through doing squats, leg press, anything. Because I think in addition to the Ozempic butt, I know that there's a, you know, the filler isn't just limited to the face anymore. There's definitely the Brazilian butt lift. There are the hyaluronic acid injections into the glutes that I've been seeing around. And so that has also been very popular. And so I've been trying to kind of educate women on, you know, trying to at least sort of take the longer route. You know, you can have a butt. It just may take some time to build that muscle, and it'll give you a shape that is a little bit more natural, so to speak, than, you know, it's a look. It's a, you know, a look that, you know, may look good now, but what happens if you, you know, get surgery and you lose weight or your weight changes? What does that do? I don't know.
I like that you brought that up, because specifically with things take time. I mean, if we really sit with it for a moment, things take time. I mean, it took me, I've been in and out of school for 10 years to become a nurse practitioner. It took me 10 years, you know, to build a consistent clientele. It took me 10 years to really gather the tools to have a thriving marriage, AKA therapy, lots of it, you know, embracing those difficult conversations, you know, it is uncomfortable when you're really trying to create something that is of value, in my opinion, in my
Yes.
profession, in my marriage, and even in bodybuilding. You know, genetically, I was born with a butt that looked very flat, pancake butt. And honestly, it's 10 years. It took me a decade of not perfection, but a lot of consistency, pushing weight at the gym, you know, focusing on protein intake, sleeping 8 hours. I think that's why bodybuilding, for me, what it's really taught me is like, holy moly, this is a full-time job in a way to learn. It's really a skill acquisition in the front end. And I didn't realize the importance of, again, like I mentioned, sleep and my stress level. And am I tracking what I eat? Do I know what I'm putting in my mouth? Am I in a deficit? should I be in a surplus? How do I maximize my time in the gym? And it definitely is a learning curve, but from my experience, it was really life-changing because it opened my eyes to a way of living that for me is really sustainable. Now, when I first started bodybuilding, I didn't have a coach who was well-versed and supportive. So what I mean by that is I was very, very low calories. I just did cardio twice a day, 60 minutes each session. I mean, I pushed myself really, really hard. And after that show, the first couple shows, I was in a mental place that I've never been in my entire life. So going from complete control, having this physique that I've never seen on my body. I'm shredded. I'm seeing striations on my shoulders, my abs, I could put quarters in between. And I'm just thrilled. I'm getting comments and compliments at the gym. It feels really good. I feel validated. It's really filling all my childhood voids at that time. This is, over a decade ago. And then post show, I'm binging. I'm shoving food in my face. My hormones are off. And I'm literally a ravenous raccoon just clawing the cabinets. And I seriously was asking myself, do I have an eating disorder now? Do I need to see a psychologist for this? And I felt depressed, and I share this because I really don't want any woman to experience that helplessness and loneliness. How I got out of it was hiring a coach who has experience, Jamie with Fit Body Fusion. She was extremely helpful. Hiring personal trainers to support me, having my friends and family understand what I was going through was really helpful. And you fast forward now a decade, and even though I'm not in prep, my foundation is resistance training, sleeping, eating protein, and just having a good quality of life. And now I'm just kind of maintaining my muscle mass. And I mean, I don't want to come off as self-righteous or condescending, but I feel like it's at this point, putting the time in, it's manageable, it's sustainable, it's easy and totally doable. So much so that if I could scream on top of the mountain and tell women, I swear on my life, if you just give it time, like respect yourself and love yourself and trust yourself, that this piece, if you just invest in your body, in your mindset, in your habits, and you lay that foundation, you literally can create a physique and a quality of life where you're not starving, you're not yo-yo dieting, you're not jumping from one workout class to the other, you're not confused, and you can sustain it indefinitely. And so the time that you're spending about how you look and why am I not losing those 10 pounds, all that energy is going toward being present with your spouse, with your kids, being creative, learning new things, and you're not fixed. You don't have to be fixated on this never-ending journey of trying to create the best physique and not feeling like you have no option but now Ozempic.
Right. I definitely, those little things all sort of led to this, point, because there were days where in med school where I could only train once a week because I was that crappy of a student that I needed every single minute of the day to study because the whole drinking from a fire hose, memorize everything did not come naturally to me. I majored in chemistry. I minored in math. I wanted to understand things. And I was used to doing 3 problems that were so difficult and you would work through them. And now I'm in this, new, med school where I have to memorize every single thing. It was a tough, med school wasn't easy for me. So I was not the best student for the first 2 years. And so I had to learn how to become a student, but, I still made resistance training I still showed up to the gym. There were times where I would just sit there and cry at the bench because med school sucked. I wanted to get out of there. But again, it was that routine. It was, doing something. Not everybody has to be a power lifter. Not everybody has to be a physique athlete. You don't have to do this X, Y, and Z thing. You can go in and, play around with some of the the machines, or the dumbbells, but, making it somewhat of a consistent habit. You don't have to go 6, 7 days a week. You could go, I would say even 3 days a week for the general population is still more than sufficient, especially if you are challenging yourself, because I know that there are a lot of women who are too scared to go up in the weight. And I look at their purses and I'm like, your bag weighs more than the dumbbell. Your luggage weighs more than the weights you are working with at the gym. People have carried children, you carry a baby. It's, at the very least, 5 to 10 pounds when it first comes out. And then it goes up, the weight goes up from there. So the women are a lot stronger than they think, at least the general population. When you put them at a dumbbell, in a gym, they tend to go for the lighter weights, which is a good place to start, but you should always be challenging yourself. So if it feels really easy, 3x10, 5-pound, bicep curls, you can start going up in the weight. Let's see what 12.5 pounds feels like, and then so forth and so forth. So, I wish I had, sort of a kind of cookie cut answer to give to people, but it really depends on what their schedule looks like, what their goals are, and what they are willing to, I guess, the trade-offs. I think one of the biggest things that I've sort of learned kind of along the way, and with talking to patients in regards to weight loss and in regards to all of that, is talking about things in terms of trade-offs instead of just saying, oh, well, you're never going to look like this. Well, I think this is unrealistic. Let's take a look at what, somebody like celebrity fitness person does on a daily basis. Or if you want a physique that is somewhat, that looks somewhat like somebody who is in the IFBB, this is what, you are saying that do you have time to do all these things? Do you have time to weigh your food out all the time? Do you have time to go to the gym 6 to 7 days a week? Do you have time to do, dedicated cardio or at least 10,000 steps a day? So, and then if not, then maybe we can find that happy medium of, well, okay, so that's too much, but what can we do? So if that's too much, what are we willing to do? Can we go to the gym 3 days a week and try something, go to the, free weights and maybe try something, upper body related? I try to make it as specific as possible, and I try to give them options. So it is more like they are choosing, like, versus me sort of telling you like, you should do this. So that's how usually I like the conversations to go, have them decide what they are willing to do or willing to invest, and then writing that down for them. So we both have a record of, something for me to follow up with them on, like, how did that go? Hey, like, I see you tried this out. Like, did you start adding protein to your diet in the mornings? Like, did that go well? Did that not go well? And then tweak it from there.
I mean, you bring up some really important points that I want the viewers to really take note of, if not literally get a pen and paper, which is, what is your goal? I think that's, for women, such a valuable question is, what do you want out of this truly? Losing the 10 to 15 pounds, we'll just use that as an example because it's ubiquitous. Is it a look that you're going for? Because you're trying to, fit into a wedding dress or go to that vacation? Is it because you want to be able to play with your children and have more endurance? Is it because, or is it something deeper worth exploring? Are you not happy in your relationship? And now you feel that losing the 10 to 15 pounds will now, in your mind, foster this amazing dynamic with your partner that you really crave, and you think this might be the solution. So I think taking that time and having that honest conversation with yourself of, why is this really important to me? And And I think that can really show the person their true intent, because maybe it's not just losing that weight. And I think that's really important. So they're not disappointed and they're setting realistic expectations for themselves. So one is, who are you? What do you stand for? And why is this so, what's the significance of this? And then two, I like how you're saying, okay, we're almost reverse engineering. This is your goal. Let's come up with a plan and let's make it realistic. And even, and I agree, even if you're working out 2 or 3 days a week, resistance training, if that's manageable for someone who's busy and starting off, it's starting somewhere. Even if it's 1 day a week, it's really just facing your own fear, facing the stories that you tell yourself, and just trying it. Because I would say for my patient population, the patients who are afraid of getting bulky, afraid of getting hurt, afraid of looking foolish, if you will, at the gym, they actually haven't tried it yet. So how do you know if you don't try? And really, I mean, this is probably more deep and philosophical and psychological comment, but if the story you tell yourself already is, look, I can never look like her, or she has better genetics than me, or I'm going to get bulky, and you're convincing yourself with that story. Well, that thought then is going to lead to an action or an inaction. So that might be someone who might say, you know what, forget it. I'm not even going to work out at all. This is too overwhelming. Or they're going to play it safe. Like, let me just take a group class. That's easier for me. However, if we shift that to, hey, yes, it is vulnerable. It is scary. I've never tried this before. It's unfamiliar. And I'm going to be courageous here. I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to step away from what the status quo and what the average woman is doing. I'm going to pave my own path. I'm going to allow myself this opportunity to expose myself to something new. And I'm going to give it time, not 1 week, not 2 weeks. I'm going to give it an ample amount of time just to see how I feel. And maybe there's something pivotal in those experiences that will shift how I feel about myself, but I will never know unless I try. And I agree with you. I think most women don't reach their full potential in many avenues, unfortunately, because they're just so scared and they just freeze and they're like, forget it. And I think, I wanted to encourage everyone listening, just try, just start somewhere.
If I could bottle up the courage, whatever it is that sort of led me to overcome my fear in the gym, because I started, I was active as a kid and then restarted after I graduated from undergrad. I was 198. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I had quit cigarettes and get back into the gym. And I felt very self-conscious. I could barely do 20 minutes on the elliptical was all I could do. And it was, my lungs were on fire. But when I started picking up the weight, I had the same reservations. I was like, oh gosh, what do I set the squat rack to? Oh my God, I had to like fiddle with, what's my rack height? And I would just look around to, make sure, like, I hope nobody's looking because I look like an idiot, like trying to adjust this thing every 5 minutes because it's not like a correct height. I squatted with running shoes for the first 2 to 3 years of my lifting journey. So I didn't realize that, probably be better if I had either flat shoes or actual heeled weightlifting shoes, which is what I use now. But people have commented at certain points, have said, guys have said stupid things to me at the gym. And, if I could just bottle up what, like, the not giving a crap thing and sell it, I would 100% sell it, give it away for free, do whatever. But, I wish there was a way that I could just sort of like, literally just put that upon people, like, here, go to the gym, try new things,
Yes.
be courageous, because it's not easy. It is not easy. And I wish I had the secret to kind of telling, how the secret to getting into the gym is actually showing up, facing your fear, and just getting it done.
And thank
over and over.
And thank you for sharing that, because just with your example of not knowing how to put the pegs for the squat rack and fumbling and going, what the heck, and yes, I don't think there's a one solution to really change the perspective of women around the world. But I think even us just having this conversation today and just sharing, hey, we were beginners before too. We did not know what we were doing. And guess what? I'm still trying to figure it all out. I don't have all the answers. I'm always learning, always trying to stay humble. And I think just having more of these real life conversations. And I think that's going to really help women go, okay, if they didn't know either, and I don't know, but they were able to do it, and then I can too. And yeah, I think that's a really powerful message of just leading by example. And I agree with you. I think if women can I don't think you gain confidence. You don't wake up and gain confidence. You don't wake up and get strong. You don't wake up and have the physique that you want. For me, it's like, put in that work. You gotta put in that work, regardless of whatever that you want in life. It takes effort and constant effort. And I think that if we give ourselves that opportunity, it will be mind-blowing of what we can create. And even for women, when I'm in prep and I have this physique, and it's interesting to hear how outsiders, their perception of it, and they'll say something like, oh my gosh, Joy, look at your body. You must love how you look. You must feel so confident, and my answer to that, and this is just my own opinion and perspective, sharing from my own lenses, is, first of all, I'm starving. Okay. I'm really hungry when I'm this lean. So, don't get it twisted. It's you're not really missing out that much, because this is when I'm talking exotically lean. I'm suffering a little bit here. So don't be fooled. And I always appreciate their compliments, but really, when they ask me, like, are you confident? You must be confident because of your external shell. In my opinion, confidence comes from doing the work, having no one spoon feed you all the answers, rolling up your sleeves and grinding. And for me, when I look back at photos 10 years ago when I was prepping to now and go, holy, wait a minute, like, I did that. I did that. I accomplished something that I never in a billion years thought I would ever come close to it. But I woke up, I did everything. And many times when I wanted to quit, I dusted myself off, kept on going. And that resiliency that I built, that was confident. In my marriage, when times were tough, and there were times where I'm like, I don't know where we go from here. We're arguing all the time. And then to go, gosh, my husband and I, we did the hard work. We took initiative to get therapy. We were vulnerable and we did that. And now we're here. And so my whole point is, confidence comes from, in my opinion, doing the work when you don't want to do it. And that will transform your life in every single domain. And it's sustainable for the long haul game. So for me, confidence is not just how you look, not even close. It's in here and it's in here. And the byproduct is a physique that women want to attain. I know we're kind of short on time, so just
that's okay.
Quick thought experiment here. So just say, for all the listeners that are considering Ozempic or they're on Ozempic already, again, 40, 50 year old woman who wants to drop the last 10 to 15 pounds, what would be your main golden nuggets for them, whether they're on Ozempic or not, just to maintain muscle mass, to prevent the risk of osteoporosis, and have habits that they can follow long term?
I would say the biggest things is, especially for those who are sort of in that last 10 to 15 pounds normal body weight and somehow have a prescription or a source for Ozempic, is to really consider a resistance training on a regular basis if they aren't already doing that. You know, to avoid osteoporosis, to maintain that muscle mass, and also to kind of give you that shape, which I think most women do want. They want that toned look, and that's not going to happen unless you build your environment such that it becomes much easier to build muscle. And so regularly resistance training, at least 3 times a week, making sure that you get protein with every meal. For those who are actually tracking, I think an easy way to do it is 1 gram per body weight. I not even going to go into the, lean body mass versus body weight. I think body weight's just a little easier for people. And, at a certain point, you're gonna have to, get out of a caloric deficit. So whatever, space that you're in, if you are experiencing kind of diet fatigue, if, because just because you're on Ozempic and you're not hungry doesn't mean you are not going to have the other effects that being on a hypocaloric diet for a long time will lead to. So poor sleep, because you are always in that sympathetic drive, which I'm not sure if you experience that during prep, towards the end of prep, where you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning and you feel
Yes.
wired and ready to go. That doesn't change. Fatigue doesn't change, being exhausted, feeling like I can't do my work, my daily, job, because I feel even more exhausted than usual. And for those who do train on a regular basis, just feeling weak at the gym, not feeling like they actually want to go to the gym because they're so tired all the time, and not really, wanting to sit on the couch because they're just exhausted. So, being on the lookout for those sorts of warning signals, because those don't go away with Ozempic. You will still get that, if you're dieting for very long periods of time in a very large deficit. So those are things to watch out for as well.
I love that. Just to recap for all the viewers out there, and this is like so important, because I feel like this is the foundation of life. This is the foundation of life. Training 3 times a week, resistance training with weights, holding on to weights. And if you don't know, hire a personal trainer. I think that's a great idea. Or if you have some more experience, you need programming, there's RP app. I'll put that in the bio. I love, I'm a big fan of RP because it's science-based. Anecdotally, it absolutely works. It's affordable, for those who might not be able to have access to a personal trainer. I think that's a huge resource for a lot of women. So I would love women to check that website out. Not trying to sell it, not a promoter for RP by any means, not a sponsor. I get nothing for this. I'm just really trying to spread the authentic goodness here. Second, protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you are 120 pounds, that would equal to 120 grams of protein. You can track that on MyFitnessPal. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, and fill in the rest of your fats or carbs with enough calories, so that way you have energy, like you were mentioning, Dr. Christle, where you're not lethargic. And so important is the 8 hours of sleep, because that's where we gain muscle. We regulate our hormones, especially leptin, which is correlated with our hunger, with sleep. And I do feel this trifecta, the training, the protein, and the sleep, that is ultimate your core. And try that, give it time. And if you are on Ozempic, still do these things. So that way, when you get off it, you are in an optimal place where you don't have to go into that dark place that I experienced. And that way you can thrive on the medication. So those are the main things. If viewers have any questions, I know you're busy and you're limited right now with your clients, your one-on-one clients, but how would they reach out to you if they have any questions?
So I have my Instagram handle. So Dr.Christle would be one place to start. Would probably be the best place to do that. I can also send you a link to my email address. So Instagram is also a good place to start for now.
I love that. And for the viewers, if you have any additional questions, you can DM myself, you can DM Dr. Christle, if there's any other topics that you guys want us to cover. And just, again, the premise is going to be science-based. So this is all that we're talking about. These are research topics already. So we're not just pulling them out of thin air, but it's also really candid and transparent for just the everyday person hearing this, so that we hope that you can digest all this information and that it makes sense. But Dr. Christle, thank you so much for your time and your expertise in this topic. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me to have my first recorded Zoom call today. I'm going to mark it on my calendar to really empower women. I think this is invaluable. And thank you for everyone that is listening. Is there anything else that you want to add or share?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on here. I'm so honored to be the first. So can't wait to see what other topics people are interested in hearing more about.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.